start by extending my gratitude to Indology Foundation and especially to
Awareness
for inviting me to
nutrition.
present this talk and for giving me this platform and opportunity to talk about a prehistoric Chalcolithic community, which is very close to my heart, especially that focusing on Southeast Rajasthan, that is the Mewar region. Before I directly jump to my topic, let me start sharing my slide. I'm also particularly happy to do this, especially today, which is Teachers' Day. But I don't see myself as a teacher. I see myself as a student. Because the day I started teaching, I started realizing that I've actually started to learn. So I am a student still now, and I will be student all my life. And whatever I have been able to learn about this culture, which was also part of my PhD topic, I will try and share with you. So let me start sharing my okay. So before jumping into the topic, as you can see, this is the first slide, and this is actually the slide of my university, that is Tech and College. So let me just say 2-3 lines about my institute to which I belong, because it has a very long and rich legacy and history. It is the third oldest institute in India. It was established on 6th of October 1821, initially named as Hindu College. And let me take this opportunity to also say that next month, that is coming month, October, 6th of October 2020, we will be celebrating 200 stellar years of our service towards teaching, towards research, and towards thought leadership. Um, this institute has produced a number of students who rose to position of excellence in various walks of life. Just to name a few, Sir Gopal Bhandarkar, the celebrated Indologist, then Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak, the great nationalist leader, then Guru Ramchandra Dattatreya Rana, philosopher, Gopal Ganesh Agarkar, the great social reformer, Vishwanath Kashinath Ashwari, the famous historian, and Dr. Dwarkanath Kotnes, the famous Indian medical practitioner who rendered yeoman service to China. The present department that I belong to, Department of IXth and Archaeology, was led Professor H.D. Sankalia, and in the last 6 decades, this institute has not only excelled in providing quality master's program and producing large number of PhD dissertations, but also invested in path-breaking researchers in AIHs and archaeology, in anthropology, biology, sociology, linguistic, and Sanskrit. With that, let me come to my today's topic. And before again directly jumping to Ahar Banas, because Mishraji told me that there will be a lot of people who are outside, who are not from the subject of history and archaeology, and may need some basic background of what is the time period we are talking about, what is the region we are talking about, so that it becomes easier later on to understand the facts that I will be sharing. You see, as a prehistorian, of course, prehistory. Let me just start. Prehistory. Prehistory means the time period where there is no written records. So as a prehistorian, I'm interested to understand those time period, the history of humanity belongs to this time period where we do not have any written records. So what do we do? In that case, archaeology becomes our tool, our methodology to understand what the life was like. If I want to know what the life was like 10,000 years ago or 15,000 years 10,000 years ago, then obviously archaeology is the only tool in our hand to do so. And I feel that the most remarkable transition in the history of humanity is the almost simultaneous appearance of domestic plants and animals in several different parts of the world, um, ranging from, say, somewhere from 9,000 years to 1,200 years ago. Now, this transition to agriculture way of life involved much more than simple herding or just cultivation. It entailed a major, long-standing, I would say, changes, long-term changes in the structure and organization of society, and most importantly, human being, we were developing a new relationship with the environment. Why a new relationship with the environment? Because as agriculturalists, as farming societies, we started to modify our landscape. We started to cut down trees. We started to burn the forest in order to make lands for agriculture. We started an artificial augmentation of food. So we as human beings are developing a new relationship with the environment and the landscape around us. You see, hunting gathering life was much easier. Easier in the sense many people were they lived largely, off the land and usually exploited diverse and resources over a broad span of area. But as farmers, as agriculturalists, we intensively utilized a smaller portion of land, creating a milieu that suited to our needs. So Shuntaro Ito, who was a very famous Japanese archaeologist in 1969, had identified, 5 different regions where origin of agriculture took place independently. Now we all know that the first theory for the origin of agriculture was put forward by Gordon Childe in his book Man Makes Himself, which he published in 1925. We talked about Neolithic revolution, and he mentioned in West Asia, in the Palestine and Mesopotamian region, the area along the river Tigris and Euphrates with Taurus and Zagros mountain on both the sides as the area where first domestication or agriculture happened, and then it spread all over the world. But now we know, based on our researches in the last 5 decades, that it is we do not believe in the single origin theory anymore. We know that agriculture developed in different parts of the world almost simultaneously and independently, and it's not like it only happened in West Asia and then spread all over the world. So Shuntaro Ito has identified 5 regions where agriculture took place independently, and West Asia, of course, the Palestine and Mesopotamia, Central Asia, the coastal regions, then southern China, the Yangtze Valley, then Mesoamerica, that is the Mexico, West Africa, the Niger River. Now, in addition to these 5 regions of domestication, now it has been identified 3 more areas, especially in South Asia, where agriculture developed independently post-Pleistocene, that is post-Ice Age. And these 3 areas which has emerged so far, one is the wheat and barley in the northwestern and western India. Then second is, of course, the rice area, the rice cultivation area of the Gangetic region. And then third is the millet and other crops in the Mewar region of Rajasthan, which we will be focusing today. Apart from these 3, 2 more regions have been hypothesized very recently in the last 5 years or 7 years, I would say. One is, of course, South India, and one is East and Northeast India. Now, so we are actually, this is the indigenous area. We will be concentrating on this area today, where we believe that agriculture has developed independently with the Harappans or West Asian influence. So before jumping into Ahar Banas culture, let me just give you an idea of the area. Now, when we talk about a region or when we discuss on regional perspective, let us understand that we are not thinking of India with the present political boundary. So India 10,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago, the political boundary was very different. So we use the word Indian subcontinent, where parts of Balochistan was with us, Afghanistan was with us, Pakistan was with us. So we're talking about a much broader area with similar kind of ecology and similar kind of cultural heritage and continuity. So the picture that I'm showing you here is the Indian subcontinent belonging to the Neolithic and the Chalcolithic. So Neolithic, again, is, the whole human history has been divided into different phases. So it starts from Paleolithic, which is the old Stone Age. Paleo, old, and Lithic comes from the word lithos, which means stone, followed by Mesolithic. These are again hunter-gatherer population, but now they're producing very small micro lithic tools, that is equated. Then we have the Neolithic, where we see this sharp transition in subsistence pattern. People are no more following hunting gathering as their mainstay of economy, but now they have become agriculturalists, they are farmers. Then following Neolithic, we have Chalcolithic, where farming is continuing. In addition to that, we have copper. Chalco is copper, so we have metal. Then, of course, post-Chalcolithic, early historic, medieval, and this is how it goes on. So here I'm showing you Indian subcontinent ranging from, say, 7,000 BC to, I would say, 3,000 BC. So this is the region, Indian subcontinent, of course. why so many cultures, early farming communities developed here, because it had a very favorable ecological condition. It provided a very suitable context for the rise of early farming communities. And it witnessed two independent streams of village economies. One, of course, in the west and the northeast, which is the West Asia. Is the area in the Balochistan part where we have Mehergarh, sites like Mehergarh, Kiligul, Mohammed, and then in the Mewar region, where almost 4,500 BC, we are seeing this. We are getting evidences of this transition from hunting gathering to agriculture. So the earlier beginnings goes back to 7,000 BC, as I have mentioned, in the northern region of Afghanistan, Balochistan, and then later the independent development of the Ahar Banas. So here, what you see, the yellow part that you see here is Balochistan at the adjoining region. Then we have the Neolithic and Chalcolithic of North India. Then, of course, this is the Harappan culture. This is the Padri. This is the Anartha tradition. This is the Ahar Banas, on which we would be focusing today. Ganeshwar Jodhpura, as has been mentioned by Vinayji, this is the Ganeshwar Jodhpura is actually a different cultural complex from Ahar. They were, of course, simultaneous. They were parallel, contemporary cultures, but they are two different cultural entities. So Rajasthan actually had two cultural Chalcolithic cultures. One is Ahar Banas and the other is Ganeshwar Jodhpura. Then this one is the Kayatha Malwa, where again we have seen some continuity of the Ahar into the Malwa region. And then this is mainly the Savalda Jorwe, the Chalcolithic trends of Maharashtra. This is the South Indian Neolithic. This is the OCP Copper Horde. This is the, again, Neolithic, Chalcolithic cultures of North India. And this is the East and Northeast. Now coming to Ahar culture. So Ahar is the early farming communities of Mewar or Southeast region. That is the earliest people who started agriculture, the first people who started agriculture in this particular region. The Ahar cultural sites are mainly located in the valleys of rivers Banas, Berach, Pottery, Gambhiri, Khari, and their tributaries. So far, total 106 sites of Ahar culture has been discovered. And the first Ahar site was discovered in the district of Udaipur, was excavated by Professor A. in 1961 and 62, based on which he gave the name of Ahar culture site. There's a report published, a very detailed report published in 1969. Then V.N. Mishra and V.S. Shinde of Deccan College, they excavated the site of Balathal during 1992 and 98, which has contributed immensely on the understanding of Ahar Banas culture. Then Gillum, which is the largest Ahar site, standing at 25 hectares, was excavated by Professor V. Shinde, and it was a collaborative work between Deccan College and University of Pennsylvania, that is the late Professor G.L. Pushel. This was initially, this site known as Bhagwanpura was initially excavated by B.B. Lal in 5960 also. Then the site of Ojiana, which was excavated by B.R. Mani and Alok Tripathi, and then finally Marmi and Purani Marmi, which was again excavated by R.K. Mohanty of Deccan College in 2001. Now, Ojiana and Marmi have been subjected to very small scale excavation. We couldn't have very open air horizontal excavations, but the major information about the cultural composition has come actually from Ahar Balathal and Gillum of the Ahar culture. This again, just to show you, how along the rivers all these 106 Ahar sites are located, and this is the Ganeshwar Jodhpura complex. This is the Ahar complex. This is the site of Bagor, which is mostly known as a Mesolithic site, but has given very important clues about this transition from hunting gathering to agriculture. We will get into that. Now, the important thing is that why do we need to know this culture? Now, before this culture came to light, and especially the C14 dates from Balathal, which was excavated by Professor V.N. Mishra, I think is still now the site with the highest number of C14 dates ever excavated in India. We have more than 40 C14 dates coming from this site. And especially after the dates came, the whole concept of understanding the origin of farming societies and the origin of Chalcolithic culture changed in Indian perspective, in Indian archaeology. So before the culture came into light, it was believed that this origin of farming society and establishment of early farming villages came as an influence from West Asia or mostly from the Indus Valley, from the Harappans. It is from the Harappans that we have learned how to farm. It is from the Harappans that we have learned all the basic technologies. This was the main understanding because the dates of the Chalcolithic cultures were mostly a little late, whereas Indus Valley pre-Harappan dates were going to 3200 BC and the Chalcolithic cultures were all in their second millennium or late or first millennium, early first millennium BC dates. But once that 3700 date came up from the site of Balathal, and not only one date, many such consistent dates from the earlier phase of Balathal came, which actually precedes early Harappa because it starts from 3200. It was proved that the origin of farming societies is definitely an indigenous development and an independent development in this region and has not happened because of an influence from the West. And especially the site, Bagor, as I mentioned briefly, is a Mesolithic site where we have found within the Mesolithic, we have found two phases. Early one is ceramic Mesolithic and aceramic Mesolithic. The aceramic Mesolithic is the previous phase, which has given us 6 millennium BC dates. And the ceramic Mesolithic phase has given us dates of 4500 BC, so 5th millennium BC dates. Now, why is this important? Because again, see, pottery, generally, in a very general way, is always associated with farming societies and Neolithic communities. Why? Because when do you need pottery? You need pottery when you need to store things for storage facilities or say for cooking facilities. So obviously, it's not that hunter-gatherers do not need pottery. We have enough evidences of pottery being associated with hunter-gatherers, but it became more important and it was used more profusely by the farming people. So once pottery was found in the Mesolithic phase, it was very interesting that the hunter-gatherer people were starting to produce these potteries, this incised potteries, ill-fired, handmade incised potteries. And what we also got is evidences of a shift towards plant cutting. So there was a reduction in paleofaunal, archaeofaunal like bones, and there was an increase in archaeobotanical remains from the site of Bagor, which clearly showed a shift towards plant cutting or towards, some sort of incipient farming. So beyond any doubt, now we have very clear clues that yes, agriculture or farming in this part, especially in the Mewar, was an independent and an indigenous development. Secondly, the important part of this culture is that if you really compare Ahar Banas culture with other indigenous Chalcolithic cultures of India, then this I would say is the only culture which has reached to a certain proto-urban level. We see some sort of incipient urbanization. Like we get to see some site planning, we get to see monumental public architecture, we get to see streets and lanes, and we get to see very advanced copper technology. We get to see trade relations, like they had trade contacts with the Harappans and even people from Central Asia and West Asia, even going back as far as Iran. So this is the only again Chalcolithic culture which gives us that proto-urban level. Of course, it could not develop to Indus Valley, the way we see the urbanization in Indus Valley, but definitely it played a very important role. Being primarily a Chalcolithic culture, it did play a very important role. So this is the reason why we really need to look into these indigenous Chalcolithic cultures more and more. And of course, Ahar Banas is becoming the most potential, I would say, among all Chalcolithic cultures to talk about these things. Let me start with some wonderful pictures. So this is an aerial view. I am very thankful to my institute at Deccan College Archive, who have provided me all these images that I would be using. These are images belonging to Balathal, belonging to Gillum project, and they have been given to me by my institute's archive, Deccan College Archive. So I'm extremely thankful to them. So this is an aerial view of the site of Balathal while the excavation was on. As you can see, trenches are being laid and everything. And I think I have seen here Jivan Kharakwal sir, very briefly. So I think he's still with us, and he was also part of this. He was Vin Mishra sir's students. He's an alumni of Deccan College too, and he's my teacher also. Like like my teacher. I have been trained in a site in Kanmer under him for a brief period of time when I was pursuing my PhD in Deccan College. So he was part of this project, this excavation, and I'm sure this will make him a little nostalgic. So this is the aerial view of the site of Balathal while the excavation was on. This particular site is located in Vallabhnagar Tehsil of Udaipur district. The site is on the eastern margin of the present village of Balathal. And this is the ancient mound, the site of Gillum. So Gillum initially, when in 50s when the site was discovered, everybody thought it was a Harappan site because there was two mounds, one bigger and one smaller. So it kind of gave that image of typical Harappan site, like, a citadel area and a lower town area. But when the excavation, post-excavation, people realized that it is an indigenous Chalcolithic site. And this is the largest, so far the largest Ahar Chalcolithic site, standing at 25 hectares, that has been excavated. So it is located in the Rajasthan districts of Rajasthan, and there are two mounds. Now, what we will do is we will we got in terms of technology, in terms of economy, in terms of architecture, organization, maybe some ideological perspective, disposal of dead and chronology, and then we will finally decline. We will discuss on how the culture disintegrated and declined, and how to contextualize this culture outside Rajasthan, or is there a scope to do it at all? So, coming to technology, the first thing that I would mention is, because it's a Chalcolithic culture, so we have to talk in detail about the copper technology. Now, Aravalli, as an independent center of metallurgy, is very well established, and we know that it has been a very important area of copper manufacturing from prehistoric time. And in this regard, now let me mention very briefly Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, though it is not my topic today. That Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture illustrates an indigenous. This is also Ganeshwar Jodhpura cultural complex is also an indigenous Chalcolithic culture, and it sustained a larger regional economic need for copper. This Ganeshwar Jodhpura is actually the largest copper producing community, copper artifacts producing community in South Asia, which was catering copper artifacts to Indus Valley people and to all surrounding, Chalcolithic cultures. But unfortunately, very less is known about the cultural composition of this culture. Mainly, I think, because of limited excavations and very scanty published material. So, regarding the cultural composition part of Ganeshwar Jodhpura, we really don't know much, but we know this much, that this was probably a huge community. This was the largest coppersmiths community in South Asia, belonging to 4th and 3rd millennium BC, who was producing copper artifacts and catering to all over South Asia. Now, it is believed that this Chalcolithic communities, they were exploiting this copper sources and producing this copper artifacts in very large quantity and exporting to the early mature Harappans and to other indigenous contemporary societies. So, having said that, I don't mean that the Ahar culture did not produce. I mean, we have no evidences of copper technology or copper manufacturing technology in Ahar. We do have. But of course, when you have such a nearby culture which is producing so much of copper artifacts, some of these artifacts may have come from the Ganeshwar Jodhpura region to Ahar. So what you see here is some sample artifacts from Ahar cultural sites, different kinds of choppers, knives, razors, chisels, arrowheads from Balathal. And Balathal and Ahar are the two sites which have yielded copper artifacts in profuse quantity. Gillum, on the other hand, has not yielded that much of copper artifacts, very interestingly. But we have a lot of copper artifacts from Palatal and from Ahar. And some metallurgical investigation has also happened on these artifacts. You can see some of these, holes where samples has been taken. So one recent, some work has been done, in collaboration to IIT Kanpur on a Chalcolithic copper nail from Balathal, and it revealed that the process of coal deformation after initial casting was used by the Aharians. And the corrosion rate of the Chalcolithic copper was only marginally less than, the copper, the modern copper that we use today, which actually implies that the technology was really advanced. Copper technology, going back to 4th millennium BC, was really, really advanced. Several small, roughly made have also been found in Ahar, and the copper tool of Balathal, as you can see here, knives, razors, chisels, arrowheads from Balathal. Regarding the subsistence and economy, so how do we reconstruct the subsistence and economy of any culture that we are doing? Faunal material, archaeofaunal material, that is all kinds of animal bones that is there. We recover a lot of archaeobotanical samples, like soils are collected, huge amount of soil samples are collected, and then they are brought into the lab, they are floated, and then this specimens are collected, and then we look at the microscope and we try to identify the species, and this is how the process goes on. So same has been done for all the sites, and based on all the archaeobotanical and archaeofaunal remains, what we can say is that, of course, agriculture was the mainstay of economy of Ahar culture. And with that, a little bit of animal husbandry was also practiced. Some indication of hunting practices are also there because we have got the small, small sling balls, stone sling balls, which implies probably presence of a little bit of hunting. So food economy, of course, we have cultivated and wild species both. Then bones of domesticated and wild animals, including birds and aquatic creatures, are found, coprolites of goat and sheep. And then a lot of food processing equipments and food storage facilities have also been found from all these sites. So among the plant remains, so wheat, barley, of course, then different kinds of millet, because Mewar is known for this indigenous development of millet. Then green gram, black gram, common pea, Trianthema, which is this flowering plant, and of course Indian jujube and safflower. These are the kind of archaeobotanical remains that has been found from all the sites. So these grains were definitely grown and consumed by these people. Then in faunal remains, animal remains again has been studied by Thomas and Baker, by David Tetso, by Matthew J. Land from the sites of Ahar, then Balathal, then from Ogiana. Ogiana, a lot of archaeobotanical remains that actually come from the site of Ogiana. So among the domestic animals, we have this humped cattle, then buffalo, then sheep, then goat, pig, and dog has been found. And among the wild animals, we have elephant, we have boar, we have nilgai, we have black buck, four-horned antelope, cheetal, sambar, wild boar, we have mongoose, rats, fish, turtle, and of course mollusks. Different kinds of shell, bivalves are also there. Now, throughout all the sites, looking at the relatively high number of this boss species we have, that is the cattle and the buffalo species we have, and the disposal pattern that we see throughout these sites, there is no doubt that they were all part of the consumption, that they were all part of the food economy. Now, coming to a very important aspect, architecture of the sites. Architecture, why this has become very important, because as I mentioned that this is the only Chalcolithic culture, indigenous Chalcolithic culture of India, which reached to a proto-urban level. And the best evidences actually has come from the architectural aspects of the site. So last year, in fact, in 2019, me and one of my students, Aishwarya Maske, we actually published a paper also. We did a research on the settlement archaeology of Ahar culture, and we specifically focused on two sites, mostly Balathal and Gillum, simply because these sites were excavated very extensively and intensively and opened up horizontally. So we have a lot of structural evidences coming out. It has exposed a lot of structure. So it was easy for us to use the data and use the information. So we have focused on these two sites. And what we tried to do in this particular research is, first of all, we try to understand the functions of the structure that has been exposed. Then we try to understand the site organization. Then we try to understand the management and defense mechanisms. And then finally, we try to understand all the architecture in the context of landscape, which is very important. Because see, cultural features, when we identify such culture, what is culture? How do we build up culture? Whatever is available around, whatever is available locally, whatever use, we get influenced by that, and from that only we make our culture, right? Different aspects of our culture. So it is very important to understand this kind of development in the context of the adjacent landscape. So that also we tried. So in this slide, the slide that I'm showing you, what you see is the site plan of the Balathal. You see, this is the site plan of the site of Balathal that was excavated by V.N. Mishra. And if you see just in the center of the site, this is the center of the site, you see this huge fortified enclosure with very thick wall. If you see, these are the very thick walls here. Some of the pictures, a very thick wall, and this is pretty big. This has covered an area of 550 square meter. This is a very impressive structure. At the same time, I would say till date is the most elusive structure in Balathal. Now, why do I say the most elusive structure? Because till now we really don't know for sure what was the function of this structure, or what is the function of the structure. Now, what do we find in this structure? We find a lot of layers and layers of burnt cow dung. You see, inside the structure, inside this, evidences of uh, uh, architecture also, like other architecture. You see outside this, we have a lot of houses, house complexes, and room complexes, and streets and bylanes. But within the structure, there is hardly any. We have found any structure. So it's very interesting that such a huge monumental fortified structure has been built up just in the center of the site, which obviously says that it was a very important structure. And looking at the monumentality of the structure, we can say definitely this was for some communal purposes. It cannot be for us, for some individuals' use. It was for a communal purposes. But for sure, we do not know what was exactly the function, what was going on uh, this particular structure. But it's a very huge structure, very impressive, and the most impressive structure. And of course, this has been associated with the mature phase of the site. As far as the some more just images of structures that has come up from the site of Balathal. Now, as far as public architecture, so basically the architecture in from all the sites of Ahar Banas has been divided into two. One is public architecture, which are communal, basically communal structures, and then one is the domestic architecture, which are of course the individual, belonging to individual people. So first, I'm just showing you the public architecture that we have found from the sites. So from Gillum, again, we have found two very impressive public architecture. The first that you see here is this. Again, this is quite monumental. This is quite a huge structure, quite impressive. In Gillum, you see this very large structural complex of parallel walls running, north-south, almost 20-meter long. And then, of course, we have also found the circumference around the site of Gillum. Now, this particular structure, again, has been identified as a warehouse. That is a structure which probably has been... okay, I will try to slow down. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is a structure which probably has been used for storage facility. So that is why it has been identified as a warehouse. But unfortunately, due to the lack of absence of archaeobotanical remains from inside the structure, we do not know what exactly was stored in it. But definitely, this is again a public architecture and a very important part, huge, basically storage facility that was present at the site of Gillum. So these are some of the domestic architecture from the site of Balathal. The pictures that you see here is basically all from the mature phase, but V.M. Mishra has also reported a few structures from the earlier phase of the Balathal, and probably most of them were actually circular huts, small circular huts ranging in diameter, like 2 meter in diameter, and these were mainly made of mud or wattle and daub structures. They were very flimsy. And of course, in the latter part of the early phase, what we see is some mud brick and stones getting used to build the structure. So again, within the early phase itself, between the earlier part and the later part of the early phase, we have this gradual development of building technology in Balathal. Now, from the mature phase of Balathal, 10 structures have been uncovered roughly. And as you can see here, they're all rectangular or square in shape. Their foundations were laid on semi-dressed stones. In many cases, walls and floors have been found plastered with clay and cow dung, clay and cow dung, and then structural complex have been unearthed, starting with 3 rooms to 11 rooms. So, with 3 rooms and ranging to 11 rooms. Now, what does this variation imply? This kind of variations may imply a stratified society. So obviously a structural complex with 2 or 3 rooms probably will belong to maybe a poorer section of the society, poorer section of the people. And where you have 10 or 11 room structure probably belonging to richer or the elite class, elite people of the community. So obviously this kind of things talks about this kind of stratified society. Now, in structural phase 6, which is also the richest of all the structural phase, we have also found roads and streets running north, south, and east ways, dividing the structural complexes. So clearly, we have a settlement planning. Now, this kind of things are always expected from Indus Valley sites, where the whole architecture or the whole settlement is divided into grid patterns, into blocks by lanes and streets. So similar kind of, settlement planning and architecture we are seeing at the site of Balathal. Then oval-shaped fire pits have been noticed in both Balathal in the earlier phases. And in the later phases, in all the sites, this has been replaced by U-shaped chulas. And in some cases, there are three arms of U-shaped chulas. As you can see here, this arm is broken. This is from the site of Gillum, but similar things have been found in Balathal also. So which means there are two contiguous chulas. And in some time in this, from the site of Ahar also, it has been reported by Sankalia. Balathal we have found, Gillum we have found. In one room, we have found this two chulas, which may also, imply, bigger family, joint family kind of unit. As you can see, these are from the so you can see this is probably a cooking area. So there are the storage facilities made into the ground, kind of silos made into the ground, that some firing activity has taken here, probably a chula here, and some sort of firing activity has also taken up here. Coming to structures associated with technology. So both from the site of Balathal and Gillum, we have got some very interesting and very impressive structures which can be associated with technology. First, which has been reported from the site of Balathal. The first kiln, that is this one here, has come up from the phase 6 structure. The first, it is a large rectangular kiln belonging to the structural phase 6. It was enclosed with mud brick wall on 3 sides, and on one side it had a stone wall, and it's quite big. It's almost 5 meter into 4.8 meter, running like that. And the entire deposit of the kiln was composed of heavily burnt earth or dark ash, charcoal, and of course in situ pottery, broken pieces of pottery which were probably kept inside the kiln for baking. And what we also see that the kiln was continuously repaired, very probably maybe regularly repaired, because we have this fresh base of clay, suggesting that it probably was continued for a long time, so it needed some sort of repairment also, and was probably used for and another interesting thing is this quern that you see, a huge stone quern, which is on the eastern part of, which is located almost on the eastern edge of the kiln. And this was probably used for maybe pounding the clay or kneading the clay, or could be used for pounding maybe pigments for the application of sleeve. So we have, this is here. The second kiln that you see here has been found from the last structural phase, that is phase 8 of the site, and occurred immediately to the north of the first one. And the kiln rested on a stone and mud wall, and almost the entire surface of the kiln was covered with very thick red slipped tan wares broken in situ, and a few sherds of grey ware. Now this kiln is of very special significance, and I'll tell you why. Tan ware, again, this ware category is something which was always associated with the Harappans, because this ware category is mostly found in Harappan sites, not Gujarat Harappan sites. You go and everywhere you find. So before this kiln was excavated, tan wares that were found in association to the Ahar sites, where people were not sure if they were local produce or if they were Harappan imports. So people thought that probably they are Harappan imports, the tan wares, into these sites. But once this kiln was excavated and we found these tan wares right inside the kiln, which proves that these tan wares were not Harappan imports, but locally produced at the site. So this was a very important find, a very important implication of this particular kiln. Now, also because another important is that both the kilns you find very close to each other in different levels. So it also proves that the potters' residence were located within the settlement, and throughout the time it continued to be in one particular, area of the settlement. So this was also another implication of these two kilns, finding of these two kilns. At the site of Gillum, this right pictures are from the site of Gillum. A number of structures, some complete and some partial, were excavated on the southern end of the long mound of GLD2. There were two mounds, GLD1 and GLD2. So structures were excavated. Now, most of these structures yielded evidences in the form of furnaces, slags, then deposits of burning activities, and probably were associated. The excavators believe that probably these structures were associated with some sort of manufacturing activity. That is why we are getting so much of vitrified clay, and we are getting slags and ash and something this which is looks like a, some sort of oval-shaped kilns. So they have named this area as quote unquote industrial area. However, I would like to, thing is that my understanding of all these cultures have been post excavation in nature because I was not part of the excavations. So my understanding has come from the reports that has been published. I have spoken to all people who were involved in the excavation and from the director himself, like Professor Shinde and Professor Kushel and all that. And I tried to understand. And I personally feel that we should express this. A lot of people say that, yes, this is an area where probably some sort of copper technology was happening at the site of Gillum and all. But I would say that we should some sort of caution, because still now it is largely a speculation whether what kind of industrial area is this, what kind of activity was exactly going on here. It is still a matter of speculation, primarily because this particular area was excavated towards the last season of the excavation and later part of the last season. So it is hardly, I mean, it has been just partially opened up. So to draw more comprehensive conclusion would need more detailed investigation into this area. So that is my observation of this particular quote unquote industrial area. And let me also mention two things here because it just came to my mind that the structural complex from the Gillum, this one, and this industrial area, this particular two finds are, we have found a parallel of this from another site, Harappan site. So somehow, the site planning of this Ahar cultural sites equates or, resembles those that were, exactly similar structural complex, long parallel wall complexes has been found at the site of Kirsara. Only in Kirsara, it is a little larger in size, and they were all made of burnt bricks. That is the only difference. But similar kind of features has also come up from a Harappan site of Kirsara. So it just came to my mind. I just wanted to mention. Another remarkable find from the Ahar cultural sites are seals and sealings. Why would I keep on using the word remarkable? Because again, seals is something which is associated mostly with the Harappan civilization, primarily because in indigenous Chalcolithic culture, we do not have seals and ceilings. It is already mostly associated with the Harappan Valley, Harappan civilization. And seals and ceilings imply some sort of bureaucracy, some sort of administration, some sort of central authority. So generally, we would expect this kind of thing with urbanized culture. We don't expect this kind of thing with very rural, cultures. But again, Ahar Banas is one such culture where we have found seals and ceilings from the site of Balathal as well as from the site of Gillum. Gillum has produced the maximum number, but we have found, and these are impressions which were found in context from the site of Gillum I'm talking about. So first, a very small of sill impressions was found in large peat in trench 11 just outside the parallel wall. So this from here, one was found. And the second was found, a large number of sill impressions was discovered from this small, which is inside this small circular peat that you see. which is again lined with, here you can see the lining, it is lined with, plastered with clay and clay mortar, were found. In these two contexts, more than 100 seal impressions have been found, which is very impressive coming from a regional chalcolithic culture. Now, these seal themselves appear to have been primarily close storage vessels. Of the ceilings with carved backs, most have a double curvature, which suggests that they were probably were traced on the shoulders of globular vessels or large jars. And then a few of these ceilings have a flat back also. So they probably were used on just boxes, maybe wooden boxes or other, flat-topped containers. The most most impressive ceiling from Gillum, this large jar stopper, which almost is preserved to it. And if you see in general, the ceiling impressed with rectilinear or round stamp seals are actually impressed more than once. Like, this kind of rectilinear figures are more than once. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, different. So they have been stamped. Probably these are jar stoppers, and then they have been stamped more than once. The ceilings were made of clay, and that ranges in texture from very fine to coarse, with fairly large inclusions sometimes, and contained 6 basic motifs. So all designs that we have found from the ceilings, mostly 6 basic motifs we have found. So there are concentric circles, there are flowers, there are rectilinear or crosshatch designs, then spirals, sunbursts, like, sun motifs, and probably teardrops or fish. Ceilings have also been reported from Balathal. 4, I think, has been reported from Balathal. In Ahar, 19 has been reported. In Balathal, a lot of seal amulets have also been identified by the excavators. Now, while the preliminary, after seals and ceilings were discovered at the site of Gillum, the preliminary discussions of the especially Gillum ceilings focused on possible BMAC origins, especially in association to the iconography of the seal impressions from Gillum. This BMAC, what is BMAC? BMAC stands for Bactriana Marfiana Archaeological Complex. In simple terms, it is nothing but a Bronze Age culture of Central Asia, dating from 2200 BC to 1700 BC. So initially, the understanding that the seals and ceilings that we have found from Gillum probably have an influence because the motifs are very similar. We're looking very similar to BMAC. They said probably some sort of connection. They tried to build up some sort of connection with the BMAC region and some sort of maybe people coming in and going out. This region interacting with Central Asian region. However, there is a problem. Because the ceilings that we have found in Gillum in association to the parallel walled structure has been dated to mature phase, which is 2500 BC, coinciding with the mature phase of the Harappans. But BMAC is 2200 BC. Okay, so how do we address this 300-year gap? So again, people started looking at things, and analysis was done on the Gillum seals and ceilings, and that shows that probably these seals and ceilings falls within the long-standing glyptic tradition that existed throughout Middle Asia, and for most of the parallel motifs dated, as for most of these parallel motifs have been dated to 3rd millennium BC and beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. So geographically, this kind of parallels comes from very far sites like Mari in Syria, as far as Mari in Syria, to Ahar, which is the. Now, I'm not denying that the major region may have a contact with the Central Asia. Like this particular part of South Asia was interacting with Central Asia. I'm not denying, because in Ahar culture, Ahar site especially, the seals and ceilings have been found from a little later date, like 2nd millennium BC, 1600 BC, 1500 BC. So during that time, it is absolutely possible. Because see, broad distribution of BMAC artifacts in second millennium BC is a very, very well studied phenomenon. But they're hardly known in third millennium BC. And the Gillum ceilings that we are finding in Gillum belongs to the third millennium BC. So probably we cannot really connect Gillum ceilings to BMAC. But mostly from coming, maybe this is an influence of the Iranian counterpart, more of an influence of the Iranian counterpart, because the commonality of motives goes to Iran more than Central Asia. But of course, this whole Middle Asian interaction sphere that I'm talking about is not a very simple thing to understand and not a very simple thing to project also. Of course, these findings are suggesting that, yes, we do have a very complicated, very interesting interaction going on between West Asia, South Asia, Central Asia, and all that. But of course, we need more evidences for contacts and influences within this Asian interaction sphere. Then coming to Acha, okay, I forgot about. See, we are talking about these things now, but let me also mention this particular slide, which I have taken from the Ahar report that has been published by Sankalia sir in 1960. Here, from the site of Ahar, he has already shown some parallels between West Asia and the Mewar region. And this was back in the 60s. So here, these are terracotta beads. So these are, the AAA belongs to the Ahar, the TR is Troy, and TK stands for Turkmenistan. So based on terracotta beads, he had, Sankalia sir, 50 years back, 60 years back, had already proved that there was some sort of West Asian interaction or influence that was going on with this particular area. So this is nothing new that we are finding. This was there. He's given us some clue already from the site of Ahar. Now coming to the pottery. Again, pottery repertoire of Ahar Banas culture is very rich and can be broadly classified to courseware and fineware. And then within courseware, we have many different kinds: thick red slipped ware, grey ware, black and red ware, polychrome ware, and then among fine wares, we have white painted black and red ware, we have tan ware, katha ware, buff ware, reserve sleeve ware, and so on and so forth. So courseware were probably used for utilitarian purposes like making storage jars, heavy utensils, and fine wares probably were used for tablewares. They were used probably as tablewares. So here you see this is a thin red slipped ware, which are very fine, probably tablewares, and could have been used by the elite section of the society. Then we have this white painted black and red ware. Now this has been actually identified as cultural marker of Ahar Banas culture by Professor H.T. Sankalia, because in Indian context, Chalcolithic context, of course, Ahar Banas gives us the earliest date of white painted black and red ware. So that is the reason why Sankalia sir identified it was very unique, and it is not found anywhere. It was found, and then we have, this is the tan ware, which were initially thought to be Harappan imports in the site, but now from the kiln that I showed you, proved beyond doubt that these were tan wares, which morphologically, surface treatment-wise, looks very similar to Harappan wares, were actually local products. Then we have some of these buff wares, basins, and these are the different kind of shapes that you have in tan ware. These are very small bowls and basins, and in white painted black and red ware, you have again small medium size bowls and basins. And this is again a polychrome ware. Polychrome ware is when you find leaving the sleep color, like suppose if it's a red pottery, leaving the sleep color, if you find 3 more pigments which has been used to decorate, then we term it as a polychrome ware. If you have 2, then bichrome. If you have 3, then we term it as a polychrome ware. So some polychrome wares, which is again, polychrome wares are also very profusely associated with Harappan sites. We have also reported that from the culture. Some more thick red slipped ware, and these are some of the graffiti marks that you see, on some of the rims also. My understanding is that this could be some signature patterns of maybe some different potters who were using, because we are looking into a site which, into sites which existed for 1,000 years or 1,500 years. And even in one phase, like in one particular cultural phase, there must have been more than one potter And maybe each potter may have their own signature pattern. So while making the pot, and they are putting maybe their own signature patterns, it could be, it's a probability, or it could be simply just a, decorative line. These are actually not pottery, but these are basically skin rubbers. If I find parallel in today, the loofah that we use while taking baths, so probably these are skin rubbers which were used. Um, so I actually did very interesting work while I was pursuing my PhD. I did an ethnoarchaeological work in uh, uh, the village of Gillum. So in 2010 and 2011, while I was pursuing, in 2010 basically, when I was pursuing my PhD, I had visited Gillum and Balathal and all this site, and I have stayed in Gillum for several months because all the pottery and everything was, stored there in the village itself. So I had to go there to study those potteries. And then one day I was out in the market, and then I suddenly, something just caught my attention. I saw this beautiful earthenwares, and immediately I could identify some having parallels to the Chalcolithic pottery, the prehistoric Chalcolithic pottery, protohistoric Chalcolithic pottery that I was looking into. So it really caught my attention, and I thought it could be really a very interesting contribution, or a good contribution, because we still have some very few traditional potters who are producing this kind of pottery, which has some sort of similarity with the Chalcolithic pottery that I have. So if I study them, if I study their manufacturing technology, not only manufacturing technology, even the social organization, like, how they are producing the pots, how they are selling the pots, how they are, collecting soils for the pot, how they are collecting pigments from the pots, what kind of transport they are using. So if I really do a very holistic study, that could really help me to throw some light on the ancient manufacturing pottery technology. So that was my thought. And this work became more important when I went into the village and I started doing a survey, I realized that there was in Gillum at that time, in 2010, I'm talking about, there were 30 potters' houses. And among those 30 potters' houses, who are locally known as kumhars, only 6 were continuing this traditional form of pottery. Rest all have changed their livelihood. Because simply this is, we don't buy that much of earthen pots anymore. So this does not give them enough livelihood, to support their family, to support their children. So most of them have left it. And the more disheartening information that I found, that among the 6 potters, the last living generation of potters that I was archiving, I was documenting, none of their children have taken up. So I realized that I am actually facing the last living generation of potters. The youngest that I interviewed was in his late 50s, and the oldest that I interviewed was in his late 70s. So immediately I thought that, and I want to take this opportunity to all the young people who are present here already, who are studying maybe archaeology or ancient history, or aspiring people who wants to study, that, as an archaeologist or as an anthropologist, this responsibility depends is on our shoulder, that these traditional art forms are dying very fast, and nobody is to blame for that. Of course, globalization is one thing. We are looking towards a digital India. So obviously, we have to move forward. We cannot go back. We have to go with the time. But so we cannot. I don't know whether we can make sure to how to make sure that this continues. But at least whatever is still remaining, we can archive them as much as possible and keep it for the future generation to know about their roots, to know from where we have come and how we have come. So this work was actually accepted in the very prestigious journal in Antiquity, and it has been published in 2011 also. So I did a ethnographic survey. So I went door to door in all the potters' house. Initially, they were not very welcoming, but later on, with repeated attempts, I befriended them, and then slowly they opened up and they shared their valuable informations with them, and they shared each and every process of building pottery. But what is disheartening, that when I started interviewing them, when I asked them, okay, how many different kinds of morphology or types do you produce? They would say, yeah, 70, 75. Then when I asked them that, can you name them? They're hardly able to remember 15 or 16, only the ones that they're producing. So see, they themselves has lost the information, lost the memories over time. So if we do not take an initiative, go and archive these dying traditions, then everything will be lost. So I know in another 20, 25 years, we will not have a single traditional potter in and around Gillum for having this kind of ethno-archaeological work. But anyway, so this is how I have taken up how they are producing the pottery, how they are molding the clay. They're producing the pottery, drying in a leather hard condition. Leather hard is a very technical term, like when you're drying the pottery, before you put it into the kiln, into the fire, you have to dry it to a level where the moisture is dried up, but still there should be some flexibility in the pot so that you can beat up to make it into in a desired shape. Then how after it is completely dried, they are giving the sleep application, and then how they are painting, and they are actually using donkey tails hair to make these paintings, and then the final product before firing. And nowadays they are not using underground kiln, so they open fire in common grounds. Like all potters come together and they select one day and they open fire in the common grounds. So this, I will not go into the details of this work because it is available in ResearchGate. You have all my articles, so you can read how step by step I have recorded. But I just wanted to make sure that this kind of archival work is as important as excavating sites and writing reports. So what I did is I tried to gather information about the present morphologies, the present types that they are producing, and to see whether I have parallels in my chalcolithic. So these are the typical globular pot used for liquid storage, probably water. Then this is a tawa kind of thing for making chapati. This is a small globular pot equivalent to the lota. Many of us have metal lotas in our hand. We still use it, copper lotas to drink water. And then this is a gray, again, a gray or black slipware or a gray ware, which is mostly used for making buttermilk. And then these are some ceremonial vessels. This is a lead. This is a dhupania, like a dish on stand, which they call dhupania. This is karva. This is a spouted vessel. This is used by the women during the Karwa Chauth. Then this is a miscellaneous vessel called gurga, which I found very interesting. Like they make a handi kind of thing. See? Then they cut it along the line of carination. So the lower part is used as tawa, and this part is used as a stand to put bigger vessels over the chulhas. Then, of course, piggy bank, galla, and then different kinds of diyas and deepa. And equate and see if I'm finding parallels with my chalcolithic pottery. So yes, this is a typical globular pot, and we have so many of such from the Ahar Banas culture. Which are in the thick red slipped category. We have this handi or munno, or similar has been found from chalcolithic. Then dish on stand, this is from Ahar, and this is from the present day. This kind of things has been found from Aharian sites. This is the present day. Then when I was coming back in Jodhpur, I got a train, and then suddenly I saw people selling buttermilk in this kind of cups, and immediately I could remember a morphology that was published by Sankalia in the Ahar report, which has been named as T68. So in this way, we try to, I do not claim that, however we are seeing it today, exactly we can put it, 4,000, 5,000 years back, but at least it gives us some kind of insight to understand the functions of, these different kinds of potteries and probable uses that these potteries may have been used. And see, even the painting, this is a painting on the buffware. And see the present day painting, nothing has really changed. The tradition is continuing till today. And that is why I said that, understanding everything in context of the landscape is important. The present day of this Gillum is actually 1.5 kilometers away from the ancient site. See, the landscape has not really changed. It still has the Banas River. It still has the farmlands around. They still, every morning, they get up and see the peacock. So obviously, when they're thinking of, when they're trying to develop some aesthetic sense, that is where they're getting the inspiration. And the same way, the Aharians also, develop their inspiration from the nature. And that is how they have built up their culture. Then other material objects, we have many different kinds of terracotta objects, stone, metal objects, and there are some few terracotta objects that we have found from the sites. As far as beads are concerned, I would like to say a little bit. Beads also have been a very, very important finds from all the Ahar sites. Again, why? Because it has also given us some clues about the trade networks, like what kind of materials probably the Aharians were getting from outside, what the Ahar people were giving to the outside people. So the beads, the raw material that we are finding among the beads, kind of give us some clues on that. So beads have also been a very, very important finds from all the Ahar sites. And in Ahar, a tiny terracotta container with rope decorations around the body was found containing 11 beads. 5 were of fanes, 4 of shell, and 1 each of agate and carnelian. Then from Gillum, large quantity of agate and carnelian beads, along with bead making debitage, were scattered in the in level dated to mid 3rd millennium BC. So initially, when Shinda and Jain Kushal was producing, because there was debitages seen, they had also hypothesized that probably maybe there was a bead making area, or probably at the site of Gillum, people may have produced some beads. Then other important finds are this biconical and this oblate terracotta beads, which have some incised design patterns. I've already shown you the slide from Ahar, so you know this kind of biconical beads having parallels from Troy and Turkmenistan. Then at least 7 beads from the mature phase of Gillum have incised designs that are identical to those of Ahar. And turquoise beads. Turquoise beads have been associated with the mature Chalcolithic phase and probably provide some sort of, some sort of contact with West Asia, because again, turquoise is not locally available. We have lapis also. The site of Ojiana is also very important from lapidary perspective. The finds includes large number of steatite beads, as well as beads of shell, beads of bone, fanes. We have carnelian and agate, and then quartz beads. Ojiana. All these materials, the beads that has been found from the site of Ojiana, are actually locally not that available. So probably again, this kind of they may have reached to the site of Ojiana via other sites, may have come from the Harappan sites. But quartz is very easily available in and around Ojiana, but we do not find quartz beads in Ojiana, which is very interesting. But again, steatite beads outnumber all the other types: micro beads, regular beads, thick and thin disc-shaped beads. Fanes beads has been found. Again, Fanes beads is primarily known to have been produced mostly in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and we have Fanes beads reporting from many sites. So again, this is this kind of different varieties of materials that we are finding in the beads, and the different shapes also talks about some sort of trade contacts. A wonderful, wonderful work has been done by Professor Alok Kanungo of Deccan College, who specializes in this lapidary understanding in this bead technology. And he has done a marvelous work on this bead. And if you read his paper, you will get to know, you will understand more and more of these informations. Then at the site of Balathal, it has also been very significant from bead finding. So a very interesting discovery was done. A globular pot found buried in the floor, and inside this pot, 6 smaller pots were found. And in one smaller pot, this many steatite beads and job steers were found, which is understandable because these are very common necklace components. So, of course, bead making was a very important industry at most of these Chalcolithic sites, and a variety of this semi-precious stones and shells and terracotta may have been manufactured locally. The most popular material is steatite. Aravalli, it is available. Steatite is available in the Aravalli, so obviously understandable. And then next to steatite, the next choice was we profoundly find many terracotta beads. Then carnelian chalcedony agate. These probably were imported from Gujarat region. So maybe the raw material was brought in and then the bead was produced, or sometimes it could be that finished products may have also come in. Then so barrel-shaped carnelian beads from Balathal and Fanes beads, typically manufactured by Harappans, are also found at the site of Balathal and Gillum. Okay. Then coming to the ideological perspective, so we have found hundreds of terracotta bull figurines, both stylized and non-stylized. The first is in stylized and naturalistic pattern. So within naturalistic pattern, we have this humped version and without humped, and then stylistic the stylistic pattern is also very popular. But these have mostly found from the late Chalcolithic phases and also the sites which are associated with late Chalcolithic phases. For example, Purani Mound, which has been excavated by Archaeology of Deccan College, and then Ojiana, which has been excavated by Tripathi and Meena. So these are the sites, and also I have found some while I was doing my PhD from Gillum also in the later phase, late Chalcolithic phase of Gillum. I have found few terracotta bull figurines from the site. So mostly profuse quantity may it has come from the site of Purani Mani and Ojiana, and probably may indicate the presence of bull cult, but obviously developed towards the later phase of the Chalcolithic. Now, Ojiana bulls are very unique in the sense that they are all painted in white, and this white painted bull figurines are not found in other Ahar culture sites. And then has produced many bull figurines, and based on this profuse quantity of bull figurines that has come from Marni, the site of Marni, Mishra has suggested that it could be, some this particular site may also contribute to could have been a center of bull cult, and but we need to understand this more and more, because outside again in this outside the Ahar cultural domain, if we go to the central India, the Malwa region, then again Kayatha is one site and one culture where we again have got a lot of bull figurines, and then we have few Kayatha sherds, like Kayatha kind of pottery coming out from the sites of Balathal and Gillum. So again, we need to look into these things in a more deeper level. Then coming to the disposal of dead. So we really do not find any necropolis associated with Ahar cultural sites, or burial grounds associated with Ahar cultural sites as we find with Harappan sites. Probably because cremation was in vogue. Cremation probably was in practice. So we do not find much skeletal remains. However, we have found 4 skeletons from the site of Balathal, and 2 has been dated to Chalcolithic level. Now, these 2 skeletons are too small to address, a population which existed from 3,700 to 1800 BC. And these skeletons has, the strata from which the skeletons have come has been dated to 2000 BC. This particular paleoanthropological work was done by Wen Robinson along with Veena Mushrif Tripathi of Deccan College. Now, interestingly, Balathal, among this, one particular male skeleton has given us the earliest evidence of leprosy in India. And this is a very, very important fact. So actually, Ahar culture, and especially the particular site of Balathal, has given us the earliest evidences of leprosy in India. So the comparative genomic research suggested that leprosy evolved either in East Africa or maybe somewhere in South Asia during the late Pleistocene, and then it spread towards Europe and the rest of the world. So the earlier widely accepted date of leprosy is found in the ancient texts only, to 600 BC, and I'm referring to Sushruta Samhita and Kautilya's Arthashastra. That is 600 BC. But now from Balathal, scientifically, for sure, we can push back the date of leprosy to 2000 BC because we have a specimen here This is a middle-aged adult male skeleton, demonstrates a paleopathological condition to that of leprosy, and push back the date of leprosy to 4,000 years. And the way it was not also given, the kind of burial that we expect. It was the way the skeleton was found interred in the ash. It was found inside that, within the ash deposits of that huge fortified area at one corner. So it's almost into the ash. It was kind of thrown away into the ash. So it was not even a proper burial, but it was found in a very tight flexed position, this particular burial. This is a very, very important find. However, we need to look for additional skeletal and molecular evidences of leprosy in India and Africa to confirm, the origin, African origin or South Asian origin. Of course, we need more than this. Now, I'm almost towards the end of my talk. So, chronology-wise, again, as I mentioned, that Balathal, we are very fortunate. Ahar culture has given us lots and lots of C14 dates, and my sincere thanks to late Professor V.M. Mishra, because it is because of his initiative, we have the maximum number of C14 dates coming from a Chalcolithic site of Balathal, and the most C14 dated site, I would say, in India. So the earliest that has come from Balathal goes back to 3700 BC, and as I mentioned, that not only one date, several such consistent dates have come. And the late dates, the latest that we have is 1830 BC. This is the Balathal. As far as Gillum is concerned, Gillum have not produced as early dates as Balathal. So according to the excavators of Gillum, Professor V.S. Shinde and late Professor J.L. Poshel, they have again put Gillum into three developmental phases. That is early Ahar Banas, middle Ahar Banas, late Ahar Banas. And they have given these date ranges like 2000 to 2500 or 2000 to 1700. And then from Ahar, we know we have some second millennium BC dates. And we have also late dates like 1500 BC. So taking all these dates into consideration, if we really want to talk about a regional perspective, then the beginning is somewhere around 3700 BC, that is early 4th millennium BC. And the culture is, if we are seeing a decline or disintegration by 1500 BC. So this is the kind of date range for the Ahar culture. Of course, this culture declined. We have a disintegration. So this has been reflected in the late Chalcolithic phase. Especially this has been studied at the site of Gillum. And a similar kind of late phases has also been found from the site of Ojjiana, the site of Mound. Balathal did not have a late phase because Balathal was abandoned by 1800 BC. But Gillum has a late phase. Ahar has a late phase also. So overall decline is seen in the lifestyle, is reflected, the structures and the pottery, the structures and the complexes of stones, of mud bricks are now again replaced by either small circular or maybe rectangular structures and wattle and dwarf structures. And so some of the wares do not continue, the fine wares do not continue. And even if they continue, they are deteriorated in their quality. And of course, contact with the Harappans have declined, but it remains constant. I mean, the contemporary Chalcolithic cultures remains constant. And the reason why I'm saying is that outside, decline or disintegration of a culture does not happen overnight. So it's a process. It's a cultural process that takes maybe 200, 300 years. So as I mentioned, the site of Balathal was abandoned by 1800. Gillum continued till 1500. Ahar continued till 1500. And interesting find is that outside the Rajasthan domain, which is the core area of the Mewar, which is the core area of Ahar Banas, we have actually found Ahar culture in Central India, at Kayatha, where we have found a distinctive layer of Ahar. And then also in Navdatoli, which is a site on the Narmada, we have found it mixed with the local Chalcolithic culture. So which means that, basically the decline of this culture is kind of equated with the decline of the Harappan. As and how the Harappan culture started to decline, Ahar culture also started to decline. And probably the main reason was environmental, because the area started to get dried up. The desiccation phase started from 2000 BC onwards, rainfall declined. And as I mentioned, that the mainstay of economy of these people were agriculture. And we know that Rajasthan is a semi-arid area. So probably the rivers were not perennial as long. And also the reason why probably Balathal was abundant at the earliest, because close to Balathal we do not find any rivers, but we have two large depressions which used to hold the rainwater. So the moment the rain declined, probably the water, availability of water also declined. And the reason why probably Ahar or Gillum could sustain a little longer is because these are close to the rivers. Gillum is just 1.5 kilometers from the Banas, which was a perennial river in the beginning of at least in the beginning of the Chalcolithic phase. So because of the environmental deterioration, the culture declined, and also because the trade contacts declined with the Harappans, because the Harappans also declined. And so probably it could be that a section of people started to move towards the Malwa region, which was still comparatively fertile, because it is fed by big rivers like Chambal and Narmada and Petma and all that. So that is the reason why maybe we find like this in Kayatha, we find a distinctive layer of Ahar people. So there is a gap between the Kayatha and Ahar, and the way the Ahar has been found at the site of Kayatha, you do not see any development. It is like somebody has just come from outside and have settled down and have just settled down and started to. And in Navdatuli, it is again, it has been found mixed with the culture. And I mentioned the site. There's Ahar material has also been found in association to Harappan sites and Harappan material, especially the site of Kanmer. I think Jivan sir is here; he could throw more light. I was there in Kanmer for a few days, and I took some training as a student under him. So in Kanmer, also in the mature phase, they have found this white painted, typical black and red ware Ahar pottery. So there is a lot of evidence of this this interaction network, this sphere that was going on. And of course, as and how the Harappans declined because of the environmental deterioration, all other Chalcolithic farming societies, which were also dependent on this environment, the rainwater, the rivers, declined, and trade as well declined. And initially, slowly, it took some time, but slowly, this got disintegrated, and people maybe got distributed or dispersed into different regions and got assimilated into other cultures. So with that, I hope I have been able to give you some idea about this culture. Again, as I mentioned, I do not have so many years of research experience and teaching experience. I'm comparatively young and one of the young guest teachers in Deccan College, and I said I do not consider myself a teacher. I consider myself a student. I myself have a lot more to understand. I myself have a lot more questions to look into. And of course, I hope that in future years, I'm hoping that we'll have some good research coming up, and we will try to still find answers to some of the unanswered regarding the development of this indigenous Chalcolithic farming cultures and what kind of contributions it had in the development of the overall civilizational developments in South Asia. So with that, I finish my talk. So these are the contributions of Ahar culture. So of course, first thing is early beginning of agriculture in the Mewar, absolutely independent indigenous development. We have nothing to do with the Harappans or West Asia. Then of course we have this, the site like Bagor, site like Gillum, have given us some clue that there is the indigenous hunter-gatherer population have slowly transformed into the agricultural farmers. Then 3 phases of Chalcolithic development identified. We have new architectural evidences, kind of evidences which we don't expect from rural Chalcolithic settlements. Then, of course, we have contact with contemporary Chalcolithic and Harappan communities. Then cultural influence seen in their material equipment. And then, of course, interaction sphere, the Middle Asian interaction sphere that I talked about. And then, of course, decline coinciding with the Harappans, of course, climate and trade being the major factors. So with that, I end my talk. And this is again, another picture of my institute, college. And our tagline is Sang Shrutena Gamimahi, which means let us be united with knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita ji, for your